are set, the odds are high. Every bet a test who will survive. Chasing stacks, outlast the crowd. Only the strongest left now. Who's ready to win? This is more than gambling. Let's start the show. It's Last Man Standing.
Welcome to Last Men Standing, the Circa Survivor podcast, brought to you as always by Survivor Splash Sports and Race Oracle. And with me as always is my guy, co-host Jason Anik. How you doing over there, buddy?
I'm doing great. I appreciate our guy Mike Jones in the back letting the music play a little bit because he sees I'm feeling it. I feel like every week I'm going to sort of just have that stank face going with that music. All comments rolling in. Tony, happy to be with you as always. We're both wearing red, little Christmas theme tonight on Last Men Standing.
Yeah, we got red. The show's got green, so it does look a little Christmassy. We got questions rolling in already. Elijah says, do you trust the Browns or Bears more at home this week in their respective matchups? We will definitely get to those two. And Elijah, if I forget to answer this question later, feel free to ask it again about comparing those two together. Look at this. Look at this. We got your twin here watching the show. Little John Anik.
There he is.
We got Dixon Sider popping in. We got Daniel back again. This is great. I love it, man. I love seeing all of this engagement from you guys. And I love knowing that your brother's watching. John Anik of UFC fame, for those who are unfamiliar with what John does. And look at these two
There
at
he
a
is.
Patriots game a few years
is.
back.
There he is. There's
Love
the
it.
better half. There's the better half. So, Tony, man, I'm excited to be with you. And I will say, we did a Monday night show last week. We sort of came at you a couple times. And I said to Tony, we were talking, I said, I almost want to save my bullets for Wednesday night because inevitably, no matter how these weeks shake out, there's just always so much there. And for those of you that tuned in last week know that I have one entry left. I went on the Packers. Glad to still be alive, Tone.
Yes, you are still alive with an entry. I've still got a few entries left as well. Only 228 people eliminated last week. 89 on the Commanders on Thursday night, 70 on Monday night. 89 to the Eagles on Thursday night, 70 on Monday night to the Commanders. So very little carnage on Sunday. There's now 4,418 people left in Circa Survivor competing for the $18.7 million prize pool. And by the way, there's 6 entries left that have all 10 of their entries available. 6 people who have all 10 entries available. So congratulations to those 6. But there you see it, 4,418 left. The implied value, $4,237 of each entry that is left. Now that you guys know where things stand, Jason and I are going to do a little recap. We're going to talk about week 6 and the week that was, give you some of our takeaways. But first, let's hear from one of our sponsors, Splash Sports.
Sports fans, don't miss out on the action right now at splashsports.com. Join leagues and enter massive contests with guaranteed multi-million-dollar prizes. Splash Sports brings the contest experiences straight to your phone in over 40 states with even more ways to play, compete, and win all season long. Finally, a way to play the games we know you love against your friends for real money. So get in the game and download now on iOS or Android or play on the web at splashsports.com. So, Tony, I went over to Splash Sports today, and for those of you that have been with us, we appreciate you all at Last Men Pod. But our joint entry, champ, in the Circa Survivor Contest was eliminated, right? So I went over to Splash, right? I think, Tony, we got to maybe get in on something over here, right? I was looking at some of these contests. I was looking at that millionaire. You saw that pop up. Mike Jones, great job on that. But you saw that Millionaire Survivor Revival pop up there. I think $150 entry. So I think we may need to get in on something, Tony, so we have a little juice together, if you will.
I like it. And they got the other one that's $1,000 entry, just like Circa. It's $1,000 entry. You got some big guarantees on these contests. So definitely go on over to Splash Sports and check those out. But let's talk about the week that was week 6. Again, not a lot of carnage, but interesting things happened in this game. We saw some injuries. We saw a few upsets. What are some of your takeaways, Jason, from the week 6 slate?
So I got to just start on Thursday night, the main takeaway, right? Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, it was Mac Jones and your San Francisco 49ers upsetting the Los Angeles Rams, although apparently more 49ers fans in that building that night. But last week, Jackson Dart, and there I am in that Mac Jones clown suit, by the way. Mac Jones, not as good this week, Mac Jones, but I digress. So Jackson Dart Cam Scattaboo, right? And for those of you who don't know, it's 1-0, but it's pronounced boo. But like, I'm drinking all that Kool-Aid. I was just blown away. And that Thursday night, right? So I talked about 2 weeks ago, the 49ers, and it's such a quick turn in Circa Survivor if you're going to play that Thursday night game, right?
Yeah.
And the Eagles sort of coming off a loss. I understand wanting sort of to get them back, but Al Michaels had a really interesting point about Jackson Dart's ability to read the room when he came into the broadcast meeting at a young age, right? And that went a long way for me, right? There's certain guys that just have that sort of leadership ability, and being able to read a room. Guy like Al Michaels, who's been in every room with every celebrity, who rolls with new broadcast partners all the time. I think it said a lot. So for me, I guess from a Survivor standpoint, it was easy for me not to use the Eagles. They weren't available to me, but anyone who sort of got aggressive on the Eagles Thursday night got to be second guessing themselves division game a little bit there. Your thoughts on that Thursday night game, Tom?
Yeah, you might be second guessing yourself. And then you had another spot a couple weeks later, same matchup, and you think maybe you save them for there. I can't speak for people, but I'm thinking that maybe they wanted the whole island idea, get through on Thursday, then maybe you have Carnage on Sunday. Obviously, it didn't work out that way for them, but it shakes things up big time because the Eagles play the Bears on Thanksgiving. And a lot of people for most of the year have assumed that that is the best spot on Thanksgiving. Well, now you got some concerns. I would say we like to use the term red flag. I'd say the Eagles have the check engine light on right now.
I agree.
There's some concerns in Philadelphia. Like, would I be shocked if they all of a sudden just reeled off 8 straight wins? Absolutely not. But are we sure this isn't 2023 all over again? Where we just assumed the Eagles would eventually get it together and then they just didn't? There's some bad locker room vibes in Philadelphia, Jason. I mean, the quarterback and the number one receiver seem to have some beef. That number one receiver, A.J. Brown, is putting passive-aggressive comments on social media, talking about how when things don't go your way, basically just check out. You think the head coach of that team wants his number one receiver to just check out? That was an ugly look on Thursday, and I think we're going to find out. These next 2 weeks are going to tell us how much we can trust the Eagles on Thanksgiving. Like, if the Eagles all of a sudden come out and lose again this week, you might be pulling the Eagles off your Thanksgiving board, man.
Well, I agree. And Tony, I've said for a long time, absent from the Circa Survivor Contest, that when we look at NFL schedules and you say, oh, they got an easy schedule, right? Oh, it looks so easy on paper, right? Even as a Patriots fan, as an example, this season, the schedule looks so easy on paper. There's so many variables as these things play out, right?
Yeah.
So even some of these games, Tony, I promise you, I can make a statement now that I will disagree with 21 days from today. So
absolutely,
I could go on and on. And Tony, you know, we talked a lot early in this contest when you had you still have multiple entries and I just have one, and it shifts my perspective greatly, especially when it comes to these holidays. But that Thursday night game, I guess for me, for that to be the biggest carnage, it's fascinating as we get into week 7 and talk about this week's Thursday night game as well.
Yeah, man. And one more takeaway from me, that Jets-Broncos game I thought was really interesting because we almost saw a little bit of carnage in London in the really early morning game, right?
Absolutely.
It was a weird game. Like, a lot of people have like, oh, if you were on the Broncos, which I was, by the way, if you were on the Broncos, you got lucky. And you can absolutely make that argument because the Broncos could have very much lost that game. But when you look at the box score of that game, the Broncos dominated that game. When you look at the yards per play, when you look at the time of possession, when you look at how they each did on third down, it's kind of amazing that the Jets were even in that game in the first place. But the takeaway for me for that game, Aaron Glenn is a joke.
I agree.
He is the worst coach in the NFL, and I'm going to enjoy fading him as a better, and then, of course, in Circa Survivor as well. Did you see the sequence, Jason, right before halftime where you had the fake punt? And I didn't even realize this at the time. Someone on Twitter pointed this out, and maybe fact check me on this because I'm taking this guy's, I'm trusting this guy on Twitter. He said that all the guys on the fake punt, which was successful, by the way, were all their starting offensive line. And then they had Breece Hall, apparently, which he's never usually on special teams plays in there. So it was a dead giveaway that it was a fake punt. They got it. But then he runs onto the field at some point. Did you see him like run all the way across to the other side of the field, which was weird? And then with the clock ticking down, you're about the 50-ish yard line. right before you're about to go to half, he doesn't throw a Hail Mary or anything.
Right.
He ran the fake punt and did all that just to let the clock run out. And then Garrett Wilson says after the game, very subtly throwing his head coach under the bus, in my opinion. He says, I just didn't know what was going on at that point. Well, when you say that, I didn't know what was going on, that makes your leader look bad because he's the guy that's supposed to tell you what was going on. And I think we definitely have locker room issues in Miami, by the way. That's another takeaway from week 6 with the whole Tua situation.
So real quick, before you go to Miami, let me just touch on that Denver game, because regardless of the statistics, your point's well taken about Denver looking dominant on paper, but you're not going to get me saying that's not a lucky win for anyone on Denver, right? And you see guys get tight, right? I forget his name, but the punt returner, right? Who didn't field the punt late in the game. There's a ball. If I'm on Denver, and I was rooting for my guy, Tony. So I'm sitting here at home rooting for the Jets, and then I find out Tony's in the Broncos. And Tony, I love you. I'm rooting for the Broncos. I'm genuinely flipped who I'm rooting for. And the Broncos, even Sean Payton, bad day for him. And as we get into the Broncos in this week, right? I don't know how I feel about the Denver Broncos based on that performance, but the Jets are doing everything they can to lose football games.
100% agree. And the last thing I'll say to put a bow on this is keep an eye on the locker room drama. We talked about it in Philadelphia. The Titans just fired their head coach. That could hurt or help their locker room. We'll see how that goes.
And I know you were saying something about Miami. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I just alluded to it with the Jets and then with Miami as well. Those are 4 teams who have potential locker room drama situations, which could be teams to fade in Circa Survivor as we move forward. So keep a close eye on those.
Real quick, Tony, and maybe you were going to get here, but before we move forward, I'd be remiss if we don't talk about the Washington Commanders. Now, I said to you last week, I said something to the extent for if this was week 18, Tony, and I had to take the Washington Commanders at home against the Bears, I'd feel pretty good about it. We talked about the Hail Mary from October of last year, that sort of, and then the Bears went and lost 9 straight, maybe a revenge spot. We both like the Bears plus the points. But regardless of all of that, the Commanders, those 70, I feel for y'all. Comment, any of you, where am I from with y'all, Tony, by the way? I don't know where that came from. But anyone who was on the Commanders, I'd love to see a comment, because you talk about sort of a bad beat, Jaden Daniels, weather, whatever it is, but, you know, it's not a toss. It's a handoff. Put it in the belly of the running back. Anyone who didn't see the game, I'm sure you did. But I would like to know who was on the Commanders, because regardless of an outcome in a close game, Tony, where I'm sure you made money on the Bears plus the points, does feel like a little bit of a bad beat on Washington, no?
Yeah, I agree. That was tough with that fumble at the end. And my other question from this game is, how do we now feel about the Bears? They've won a couple games in a row, but they're relying heavily on turnovers, and these certainly were not convincing wins these last 2 games they've won. Hey, you got to love it for Jake Moody, by the way, getting that game-winning field goal. Former 49ers kicker who I don't have many nice things to say about his time with San Francisco, but it'll be interesting to see that kicker situation moving forward. All right, on to week 7. We got our projections right here from Survivor Atlas. They're the brave ones who take the first crack at the projections every week before anybody else does. And keep in mind that these projections are going to change throughout the week, so go over to survivoratlas.com to check those out. But this is their first crack at them. They've got New England at 32%, which I find fascinating because there's so many spots now to use New England for the rest of the season. Jason, I'm going to pat ourselves on the back. I think you and I were some of the first ones in the industry to point this out and say the Patriots have sneaky value moving forward in Circa Survivor. The Patriots have sneaky value in Survivor pools. The Chiefs at 26%. This is the one big question mark for me this week. Yeah, I know New England's going to be number 1. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs were number 2 or number 3 or number 4. I'm just not sure how people are going to prioritize a team like the Chiefs, who have 2 holiday games. And Jason, not only do they have 2 holiday games, but I think their value on these 2 holidays are going up because of what we're seeing in Philadelphia, because of what we're seeing from Baltimore. So maybe more so now than 2 weeks ago, people are saying, I want to save the Chiefs. So that 26% number seems high to me, but maybe I'll be the one that's wrong when this is all said and done. We'll see. And then 11% trust in the Steelers tomorrow night against the Bengals. We're going to talk about that game right off the hop. But you have any immediate reactions to those projection numbers?
Well, yeah. So when you talk about the Patriots, it really is so interesting the way you break it down from a standpoint of future value. For those of us that use the Patriots, we use the Patriots in week 4. They beat Carolina 42-6. Was looking like a good use of maybe a Midland type team, whereas now it's quite the opposite, right? So maybe there was great value. We're feeling pretty good about having the Patriots, whereas at this point, I'd love to have them available to me. But gosh, I have so much confidence in Mike Vrabel. I would say with Brian Callahan, it's ironic. Tennessee fires Mike Vrabel and his replacement gets fired the week that he comes back into town. I go on for hours about the New England Patriots right now. I have so much confidence in the whole operation. So the idea that they would go in and stumble against Tennessee seems unlikely. So that 32% doesn't surprise me. But to your point, it does based on the future value.
And if those projections are accurate, it tells me that if it ends up that way, people are choosing comfort. They're not worrying as much about the future as they maybe should be, and they're just wanting to survive another week.
And do you know how happy it makes me that the Patriots could provide comfort to those in the survivor pool, right? Like back on the map, if the Patriots are comfortable. And Tony, what I'll tell you about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I know we're going to get to that game, but doesn't surprise me at all to see them at 26%. And maybe I have different goggles on now with one entry. We're going to talk about the Chiefs later, so I don't want to spare my bullets. I'll save it for that game. But this was a week where I was not considering the Chiefs very much at all until maybe they did what they did to the Detroit Lions last week.
They certainly are coming around, and they get Rashee Rice back.
And look at me, I'm wearing Chiefs colors, Tony. Totally.
I guess we both are in a way. Yeah, I don't have the yellow, but yeah, that's a good call. Absolutely. All right, you ready to do this, man? You ready to just jump right into this with the Thursday nighter?
I am.
Let's go. All right, we got Steelers at Bengals. Steelers are 80.4% available to folks in Circa Survivor. Mike Tomlin's 0-5 in his last 5 Thursday night games. Zach Taylor's 0-2 in his last 2 Thursday night games. FYI on that. This is the 3rd week in a row that we have a meaningful Circa Survivor game on Thursday night. The last 2 have not worked out well for the favorites. We will see if that trend continues. Joe Flacco against Mike Tomlin. This is obviously, with all his years in Baltimore, Joe Flacco knows Tomlin well, but I was surprised to see Flacco's only played Tomlin and the Steelers once since 2019. That was last year. He had 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in a win over the Steelers. Keep that in mind. Future value-wise, the Steelers play the Bengals again in Week 11. And I've had people say to me, and I think this is a lazy take, people have said to me, well, why would you take Pittsburgh this week when you can just take Pittsburgh against Cincinnati week 11? Well, let me tell you a couple reasons why. 1, the Bengals are going to be off a bye that week. 2, the Steelers are healthy today. This is a team. You need me to list down all the guys who usually get hurt on the Steelers? TJ Watt, Highsmith, etc. They're healthy now. The Bengals might be without Hendrickson. That might be reversed for week 11. Maybe Hendrickson is healthy. Maybe he's traded. We'll see. And the Steelers might be the team that is banged up week 11. So I don't like the game as much week 11 coming off a bye, but I got more to say on this game. But let me ask you there, Jason, in isolation, let's say the health is the same. Would you rather be facing a team on a short week on the road or at home after they have a bye?
At home after they have a bye.
I'm on the other side of that. You'd prefer that. Okay.
I would, but maybe, Tony, I'm reacting very specifically to this situation, you know, and I don't want to react too specifically to this situation, but I do the home road thing. And maybe I'm opening up a little bit of a lens into my view in Survivor, and hey, it's early, but the home road thing matters quite a bit to me in terms of the Survivors thing. But without prepping for that answer, that's the gut reaction. You're on the other side.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of it, man. Health in mind, too, which I kind of took out of it.
You said, you took that out of it, right? So I'm assuming no way Joe Burrow, and I know he's unlikely anyway, but I'm assuming same guys walking through. Flacco with some more time. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the Steelers in this spot, even though it's on the road. We could get into a whole philosophical conversation. I think home field advantage is a bit overrated these days. A lot of people still have in their mind the whole 3-point thing for home teams, and that's just not the case anymore. I would much rather the Steelers here on the road, in my opinion. But it's a question. You and I have different feelings about it. People should ask themselves that question. Some people are going to agree with you. Some people are going to agree with me. Whatever your answer is to that question, that may color whether or not you end up on the Steelers this week or not. And you know what else might color it? what else do you have week 11? Maybe you've got another game that you love week 11 over this one. So go ahead and fire away with the Steelers this week.
Yep. Well,
and
great. And a couple things in terms of the home road stuff, right? Go look up Mike McDonald's record as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, home versus road. I mean, there's a million different ways to skin it.
Absolutely.
Quickly on this game specifically, from my standpoint, right? I would love to look hard at the Steelers here, but Joe Flacco has prevented me from doing so. And, when we talked about the takeaways, we didn't talk about the sweat on the Green Bay Packers. Is that right? Am I supposed to go back and do that? Gosh, I could do a diatribe on that, right? But so I gotta just go there real quickly. It's convenient because the Bengals were at Green Bay last week, and my one entry, which got through, was on the Packers. And Tony, I think we were going back and forth online with different folks about to what extent that was a sweat. I sweated the Packers like you wouldn't believe when they went for 2 and cut it to 6, and I see Zach Taylor smiling. And I told you last week, even though I knew I was going to take the Packers, I told you last week on this show, Joe Flacco was going to make me sweat. So Joe Flacco has prevented me from looking hard at the Steelers here. I saw your stuff on the huddle this week. Great stuff. I saw you on Steelers money line. I like the Steelers very much here, Tony. I gave out a pick earlier on Bengals plus 5.5 this week, just because you talked about on your, I think, a backdoor situation, whatever it is, but it's like, Joe Flacco, take my money, Joe Flacco, and the plus 5.5, just take my money. I can't trust Pittsburgh, even though I'm with you, Tony. I like them, and I would like to play them here, despite the vast majority of people that are alive in this contest still having them available to them as well.
Absolutely. A lot of good points from you there. A couple more things I'll point out injury-wise. I mentioned that Hendrickson may be out. Gesicki and Hudson, 2 of the Bengals tight ends, are going to be out. I think maybe you're going to see more 3 wide receiver sets from Cincinnati. But the Steelers have really good cornerbacks. All 3 of their cornerbacks are healthy now. I mentioned that last week was the first time all season long that the Steelers had every member of their starting defensive line healthy. And their secondary is healthy. I just think this Steelers team is kind of built to beat this Bengals team. The Bengals' strength is their wide receiver. Well, the Steelers have one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL. The Bengals have a bad offensive line. We could talk for an hour about that. The Steelers have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. So from a matchup perspective, I do like the Steelers a lot here. And I will maybe be firing away on Thursday with one of my entries on the Steelers.
So when I heard you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line matched up against the offensive line of Cincinnati, it was so difficult for me to envision waking up Monday morning and having Joe Flacco have won this football game, right? Right. At some point, Flacco is going to look like he is in his early 40s, right? Like there's a reason why the Browns moved on. I did think it was interesting that Mike Tomlin, Tony, did you hear that he's like, didn't like the fact that they traded the quarterback in the division, and I was a little interesting out of Tomlin, and he expects him to be a little bit better with more time to prepare. What do you think about the Flacco you might see with like a few more days here?
It's a great question, and it's actually getting me to think about the question that we proposed earlier, which is, do you prefer the Steelers now against the Bengals or the Steelers later against the Bengals? To answer your most recent question, couldn't you make an argument that you'd rather have Flacco now with less time to prepare? Theoretically, he doesn't understand the playbook quite as well. He's a little less comfortable. He's got a little less chemistry time in practice with these wide receivers on a short week. Again, not a lot of practice time. From that perspective, I think theoretically you're going to get a better Joe Flacco week 11, and that might be another reason to fire away here on this on the Steelers. But I mean, I'm not a huge trends guy, but this 0-5 for Tomlin on Thursday nights, it gives me like 2% pause. I'm like, man, is this just a small sample size, or is he not preparing as well? Is there something to this? So you never love going against a big trend like that. I lean toward it being a little more irrelevant than not, but it doesn't feel good betting into that.
And just finally from me, last thing on this game, when I know that you were high on this Pittsburgh team coming into the season, and I'm still trying to figure them out. I think they easily could have lost week 1 to the Jets. They got outplayed by New England, but though, Patriots pretty good team actually. So maybe that one's but I guess I don't really know how I feel about the Steelers, but if they're going to be as good as I think you think they are, and you've been proven right so far, I do believe I'm going to find a nice spot for them that might not be crystal clear right now.
Yeah, I could go on and on about them. Their defense is getting healthier. DK Metcalf, he's had his best 2 games of the season, the last 2 weeks of the season. He's looking really good. I think he's had a touchdown in his last 4 straight games. So there's a lot to like here with this Steelers team. But division game, on a Thursday on the road. It does prevent a lot of red flags for a lot of Survivor Pool players out there that have rules. This is breaking a lot of rules if you were to take the Steelers. So interesting to see what that projection.
Oh, you know me, Tony. No fucking rules.
I love it. All right, let's go here. We got London game early Sunday morning. Rams-Jags. Rams are 79.8% available. Jaguars are 92.1% available. I guess there's supposed to be a home crowd for Jacksonville in London. That's like their new home stadium, home away from home. We'll see if that works out. 96% chance of rain in this game. I get a little worried about international fields with rain and if there's going to be, slickness issues on the field, etc. The other thing I want to point out about the rain is Kyron Williams has a fumbling problem. Not just on Thursday night against the 49ers. He has a documented history of fumbling problems. Now you add rain into it. It makes me want to do a deeper dive on how he's done in rain games throughout his career. But common sense tells me rain isn't good for a running back with fumbling problems. Puka Nacua, they're saying he's a long shot to play. Do you have any interest in the Rams or Jaguars in this game here for Circa Survivor?
Good stuff about the rain. And I know I'm a broken record about the Rams. Had that game against Philadelphia last year in the postseason not been in the snow, I think the Rams would have won. Maybe the Rams aren't the best team in weather, but maybe they're motivated here to protect it. I like the Rams a little bit. I'm starting to want to fade Duval a little bit. If you caught last week's show, I think Tony and I remember you nodding when I said, I don't think Jacksonville's as good as we think they are. I think we both like Seattle there. I'm sure our bank accounts would probably reflect that. So I would look to continue to maybe fade the Jaguars here a little bit against the Rams team, despite losing Nacua. That's what the real number 17 is in town for, Devontae Adams to be able to sort of fill that gap. So I lean Rams, but no interest in playing it for Survivor.
All right, same page there. Before we get to the Saints and Bears, let's hear a little message from Survivor Sweat. If you're in Circa Survivor, you have to go to the marketplace at survivorsweat.com. You can shop for entries that other people have registered or sell a percentage of your entry. Get knocked out early and suffering from FOMO? Head over to survivorsweat.com today and see which entries are available for sale. Please do head on over to survivorsweat.com. They're also my proxy as well. But that marketplace was heating up this week, man. I saw entries going for 10% for $1,000, 20% for $2,000, more than double what the entries are actually worth. So it is definitely a seller's market right now. FYI on that. And that may change later in the season, but right now it's very much a seller's market. So go check that out.
I tell you what, I think I need to make a call to the bullpen to, we got Tony's Market Tips. For those of you who don't know, Tony's got all sorts of social media handles, but we got at Tony's Market Tips, at Tony's Health. What's the other one? What's the other?
Tony's Health Tips on Instagram.
At Tony's Health Tips, right? I'm talking Instagram, right? I need to make a call privately to at Tony's Health Tips and talk to Tony about some of this marketplace stuff on the side, right? I think it's the time in the season where I need to go to the bullpen and call my guy Tony on the side here. Maybe not bring everything to the table here because the marketplace is interesting, Tony. We talk about Survivor Sweat because my entry is kind of funky, but we still got a lot of sort of teams available to us, right?
Yeah.
I've used Eagles, Cardinals, Seahawks, Patriots, Colts, Packers, right? Still have Bills, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens.
Nice. It's a good-looking card.
So maybe some value. But anyway, sorry.
That's a good-looking card. That's
New Orleans
card.
At Chicago. Spread is 4.5.
Yeah, a little bit of weather potentially in this one, too. 36% chance of rain. Chris Olave limited in practice today. I mentioned earlier, this Bears team relies so heavily on turnovers. And, you hear their coach in the post-game speech saying turnovers are not luck, like we earn them, that sort of stuff. I think there's a little bit of truth to that, but it does make you worry. I think in this matchup here, Rattler, say what you want about him skill-wise, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and I'm intrigued by the Bears. Okay, I'm love the idea of getting by with the Bears here. Okay, there's not a lot of future value on the Bears. There seems to be a game like this every week that we talk about where we say, it's a 3, 4, 5 point favorite. Doesn't feel great, but if you can get by, you're feeling really good. You kind of steal one on the field. Last week, that game was the Raiders. For someone like you and for me on one of my entries that got by on the Packers, whenever we survive on a team like the Packers and someone else gets by on the Raiders, we lose ground.
Yep.
So this is the game that you can lose ground on. Because as Survivor Atlas projected, I think it was 17 or 18% on the Bears. You go ahead and take the Chiefs this week. 17% of the pool is going to gain on you if the Chiefs win and the Bears win. So that's what intrigues me about the Bears, just the fact that they have such low future value. Is a bit of a revenge game for Dennis Allen here. He's the defensive coordinator for the Bears. He was the Saints head coach for 2 or 3 years.
Good.
I think there's some institutional knowledge that can help Dennis Allen here. But there's also, check this out, there's also a running back on the Saints who, Kendre Miller, who has some beef, big time beef with his old coach. So it's a revenge game for him as well. He went on IR last year, didn't feel like he should go on IR. He wasn't really that hurt. And there was some comments, I guess, from Dennis Allen about him, like something to the effect of like not learning the playbook or something like that. So we got revenge on both sides of this game. The last thing I'm going to say about this game, about the Bears, do you remember, Jason, the exercise that we did earlier this year where we had the blanks on the screen and we said, who are your 12 teams that you're not going to use in Circa Survivor?
Yes.
The Bears are fringy. So this is the game that I would pull that exercise out again and say, who are the 12 teams I'm not going to use? Are the Bears on that list or not? If the Bears are on that list that you're going to use them, this is the week. If you've somehow got another path where you don't need to use the Bears, God bless you. That's cool. But I'm curious what that other game is, and it better look better than this one. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward.
Great stuff, and as I sit here with one entry, week 7 has given me fits in a lot of ways, both a few weeks ago and more recently. But this is one of the times where I really wish I had multiple entries, because this week feels as though if I was sitting on 4 or 5 entries or 7, 8 entries, I think there are a lot of opportunities to make up ground this week. When I look at the board overall, I feel like this Chicago, right? Like I really like the Bears quite a bit to build off that momentum against Washington and come home and handle business against what still is one of the worst teams in the NFL. New Orleans really did show me something, though. They did some good things against the Patriots. Patriots defense had some tough time getting off the field at times in that game, but if Chris Olave is not there, that's an important piece. And also it's again on the road, so to me, I think the Bears are going to continue to build. So yeah, that's a spot where if I didn't have one entry, Tony, it's hard for me to look too hard there with one entry. Do you feel me on that?
I completely feel you on that. When you've got one entry left, it's harder to make the riskier decisions like that. They pay off big, but it's one of those where do you sleep well knowing that you took the risk when you didn't have to, when there was a favorite like the Chiefs on the board? And I think this slate has something for everybody. We've got a couple big favorites. We've got some shorter favorites where you can gain on the field. We've got some teams with holiday implications. We've got teams without holiday implications. There's something for everybody. There are opportunities this week, but some of these are going to go down too. We just don't know which ones yet. All right, moving on here. We've got Dolphins at Browns. This is another one of those games very similar to what I just said about the Bears. If you can get by with either of these two teams, you're feeling really good. But does anybody have the stomach for taking the Browns or Dolphins in this situation? 100% have the Browns available, 99.5% have the Dolphins available, so that's not a problem. As we alluded to earlier, serious locker room drama here for the Dolphins. Tua had to come out and apologize today. By the way, his apology sucked. He came out and he's like, I take responsibility, and then 3 seconds later, he's talking about the media misconstruing what he said. I'm like, dude, I don't think that apology is going to go over great in the locker room. I think it was unanimous this week. Did you hear a single person come out and support Tua after what he said?
Nope.
Former players. So, man, I worry about that locker room. Tua, by the way, is 1-7 straight up in his last 8 road games. That's something to consider if you like the Browns here. I don't have the stomach for it. The weather also scares me a little bit. So I'm not going to take Cleveland, but I think we're going to see 2-3% on the Browns here in Circa Survivor.
Obviously it's a hard pass for me. And I want to bring the viewers something, not just from the lens of my one entry, but I will say, I think this is another spot where this week, if I had multiple entries, it would not be hard to convince me to put one of them on the Cleveland Browns here. I'll tell you right now, Miami, while I think they were really playing for one another and maybe for the head coach early on and doing a lot of things right in my mind, despite what the masses seem to think about that. Now they've sort of officially hit rock bottom, all this stuff in the media right now, going to a team in the Browns where I do think it's somewhat good to move on from Flacco, right? It's certainly Gabriel's team, and that defensive line ain't going anywhere. Unless Myles Garrett shows up in that report, I'm going to look hard at the Browns here, my 5 in the million contest, just because I don't see Miami sort of getting up for this football game here.
Yeah, and I do have a money line bet, to be fully transparent, on the Browns here. So I will be rooting for that side, but just a tough one for me in Circa Survivor.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We've got an AFC West showdown here. Raiders versus Chiefs. Chiefs are, we don't like to use the term free square on this show because it's the NFL and crazy things can happen, but you see it there on the screen, 12.5-point favorites, as close to a free square as you can get in this one. The Raiders have played the Chiefs pretty tough recently. I'm sure people remember that game on Thanksgiving last season where the Raiders really deserved to win and then flubbed it up at the end. And there's other examples of the Raiders covering the spread here against the Chiefs. So, that maybe gives you a little bit of pause, but the way the Chiefs are playing, like you opened the show with, I have zero concern about them in this game. They're getting Rashee Rice back, which is huge. The Chiefs' turning point in the season so far, I think, was when they got Xavier Worthy back. They needed that extra receiver. Now they're going to have those 2 extra receivers. I think we're going to see the Chiefs start looking a lot more like the Chiefs. Mahomes is playing better. Absolutely love the Chiefs from the perspective of, do I think they're going to win? However, from a strategy perspective, I don't like it, man. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. I'm worried about the Ravens. I'm worried about the Eagles. I want the Chiefs in my pocket going into Thanksgiving and definitely going into Christmas if you're someone like me that doesn't have the Lions left. I don't trust the Commanders by themselves. I need to keep the Chiefs out and available for me in case something goes wrong with that Commanders game. You have any interest in this one?
I do. Mike, if you don't mind, throw up the holiday graphic at your convenience. So, Tony, you always influence me. So as I sit here, you've influenced me with a lot of what you said there. If you had asked me 10 days ago, I wasn't even considering the Chiefs, right? I liked the Chiefs very much to beat Jacksonville on the road. And that funky ending to that game with Chris Jones there, I think those things can be a blessing, right? I genuinely think it was sort of a funky, that's not a guy that dogs it, right? So I think that and Kansas City, right? Huge win this season against Baltimore, huge win against Detroit. I want to save them desperately with one entry, Tony, at this moment. I feel like I need to look week to week and not necessarily look at the holidays. I need to get there first, right? Your points are very well. Now, I do have the Lions available to me, right? But you think I have a great appetite to take them against Detroit? Now, I believe the Ravens have a great chance to be playing for something on Thanksgiving night, have a great chance to have that game be meaningful and be a very heavy favorite in that game. But some of these projections, November 27th, what's it, October 15th, Tony? I got to stay alive. So for those with one entry, Tony, your points are very well taken. For those with one entry, do you hate it as much?
No, I like it for one entry, and I get it. I think you have to sacrifice a little bit of the future when you have one entry left. I also think we talked about the marketplace earlier. If you are planning on selling an entry in a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, someone like that, stay alive so that you can build equity, right? If you're trying to win this thing ruthlessly, I say you get a little risky with a team maybe like we've already talked about, the Bears or somebody else. But I like it for one entry. I think that it's the most likely to survive this week, and I get it. I see where your head's at there for sure. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. You don't love it though. You don't love it because you feel it. You know you're risking a little bit of the future, and you might regret it later. This is the age-old Circa Survivor problem.
Well, and that was a team that I was not even considering using. But this show is giving, you can be sure my brother, John Anik, is the joint entry. He would love nothing more than to put the balls on the table this week. And I'll get to who he wants to play. We'll laugh about that later today. But yeah, I don't mind, getting aggressive in this spot, Tony. I really don't, even though there's one entry. However, I think our particular one entry has value from a standpoint where I can afford. I used Philly week 1 too, but I think having Detroit in my back pocket gives me a little bit of option with Kansas City this week.
To answer your question too about the Chiefs, I'm going to give you guys a little insight into my process. So one of the things that I try to do every week is I try to poke holes, no matter how convicted I feel in a game. I try to poke holes in the favorite as if I'm like a prosecutor on a legal case, like I'm a lawyer, right? And I'm trying to make the case. And when I did that this week, the hardest game to do that for was this Chiefs game. It was a lot easier to poke holes in the other games. I could talk about how, Denver's coming back from London. That could be a problem, and this and that, injuries, blah, blah, blah. This Chiefs game is hard to poke holes in. And it does provide some security for sure. Eagles-Vikes, 91.6% have Philly available. 91.8% have the Vikings available. Philadelphia, as we mentioned, plays on Thanksgiving. That's absolutely huge, even though they don't look great right now. I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for the Vikings. I guess both those guys are getting snaps in practice. We'll see who ends up being the starter. I'm thinking Wentz makes a little more sense, but we'll see. As I said earlier, I think the check engine light is on for this Eagles team. I think there's red flags all over the place. I guess if you do take him in Survivor, there's not going to be a lot of people on him because of the concern. And I guess that's a plus. But I have zero interest in the Eagles or Vikings in this game. And I'll also disclose this. If you ask me what is the one team in the NFL that I have the least amount of feel for at this point heading into week 7, it's probably the Vikings. I don't have a good grasp of that team.
Easy not to have grasp of that team. You know, are you telling me a Carson Wentz versus Philadelphia Eagles here? And I'm looking at the Eagles minus 1.5. I understand everything. I think the Eagles find a way to bounce back. But for those that have the Eagles available to them in Survivor, if they're able to figure things out, there's gonna be more valuable spots to use them than using them right here. And I think if Max Brosmer ends up playing, I like the Vikings a little bit more. Carson Wentz, I don't like him in this spot, a little banged up against that former team. And I also do believe that when these world champions go home and look at those ridiculous rings and they open the eagle flaps and they fly on those rings at home, I just think, we hear a lot about what's going on, but Jalen Hurts gets a lot of credit for his poise and he gets a lot of credit for bouncing back from some of the turmoil. There's a lot of turmoil with this Eagles organization. It's a very dramatic organization, And so I do believe that they can figure it out here, but I think a lot of it depends on the quarterback play for Minnesota, which is the big unknown. So from a Survivor standpoint, moving on for me.
Wentz going up against his old team. That should be fun to watch if that ends up being the case. Panthers at Jets. This reminds me a lot of the Browns game that we just talked about, because I think this is an opportunity that you could get cute with either of these teams, depending on which side you have more conviction in. 99.7% have the Panthers available. 100% have the Jets available. Some injuries to be aware of. Garrett Wilson, leading receiver for the Jets, is out. The guys behind him, the wide receivers behind him, I don't know that anybody's ever heard of them.
Except Tony Farmer.
To be aware of. We'll say that again.
Except Tony Farmer, of course. He's heard of all of them. My guy, Tony.
The Panthers are getting Jalen Coker back, so they're getting healthier at wide receiver while the Jets are a little less healthy. But there is a name that I think a lot of people don't know about that I want to throw out there. Patrick Jones for the Panthers. Edge player. I bet 80% of the people watching the show are unaware of who he is. 15th best edge defender against the run, according to Pro Football Focus. So that could open up things a little bit here for the Jets in the running game. Panthers offensive line is playing really well. Their running backs are playing really well. They're getting Chuba Hubbard back. Bryce Young, want to guess what his record is in 19 career road games? 1-18, Jason. His one win was in overtime. Despite that, I have a bet here on the Panthers money line.
Yep.
I like it. I don't know. I'm pretty damn sure I can't trust it in Survivor, but I do like the idea of fading this Jets locker room, of fading Aaron Glenn, who, by the way, I could talk for a whole nother hour about how terrible of a coach he is.
Dude, I agree.
Panthers are coming around, but I don't think I got the stones for it in Survivor.
Gosh, I wish I had a handful of entries because I like the Panthers maybe as much as I like the Browns here. It doesn't surprise me that you have money line bets both ways. It'll be interesting to see which one of the, right? We'll win one, we'll lose one, right? It'll be interesting to see whether it's the Browns or the Panthers that goes down to the Dolphins or the Jets. But the Panthers, unless I'm mistaken, 3-3, right? For the Carolina Panthers, right? I know the Bucs sort of look to be running away with it, but if I'm Canales, right, it's like, boys, you're 3-3. We're going up to play a football team that maybe they want Arch Manning. I don't know what's going on, but they're not trying to win football games. And you think Rico Dowdle getting on a plane with Chuba Hubbard on his heels or whatever that may be to go lose a football game? Jets defensive front may have something to say about it, but gosh, man, I'm with you so heavily on the Panthers here to the point where if I had multiple entries, I wouldn't mind being aggressive here.
Yeah, I think, if you're one of those people we talked about that has 10 entries, they probably won't do this because throughout the season that a lot of these people are just doing 10 all in every week. But I have 10 entries. I don't mind one on the Panthers there in that spot.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about the game. Your New England Patriots, the game that, according to Survivor Atlas, the most people are going to be on this week. 90.7% have the Patriots available as we alluded to, a ton of future value throughout the season. Another game against the Jets later, a game next week against the Cleveland Browns in New England. Couple injuries to be aware of in this game. Calvin Ridley did not practice for Tennessee. Stephon Diggs was limited for the Pats. Yeah, look at that schedule. Keep that up for a second. How would you like, Jason, to get to Christmas with the Patriots still in your pocket? I know it's not an option for you because you've burned the Patriots, but isn't that tempting to have the Patriots still available? You got to figure Buffalo is going to be competitive in this division, and New England's not one of these teams that's going to be resting their starters at the end of the season. How do you like getting a Week 17 with New England in your pocket going up against the Jets in Miami? If there's a chop situation at the end of Circa Survivor and there's 8 guys left, and I'm the guy with the Patriots, the only guy with the Patriots left, that gives me leverage in those negotiations.
Great stuff there, Tony. And quickly to piggyback on that, right? I think it's very likely the Patriots are going to be playing meaningful football games till the end of the season, whether it's competing for the Bills in the division or who knows what the ceiling may be. Couldn't agree with you more. In terms of this spot here, you know, those of you, Tony Farmer, our guy Derbify, House, a lot of these guys that I've gotten to know have helped me with some of my biases. And so I'm able to actually speak about the Patriots with less bias. And sometimes I have to look over my shoulder because of how hyped I am and how much I believe in this team. And I've been a broken record saying that the Patriots are a year away. I said it in the preseason. I said it right. And I'm not saying that anymore. While I don't think they're necessarily hoisting it, do I think they're a live contender in this league built on parity? Absolutely, I do. So do I see any scenario by which they go down to Tennessee and lose? I don't. But with an interim coach, there can be some variables. They're still a young football team, the Patriots. They still could cough it up a few times. And this league has shown that great teams can find ways to lose football games. So to your point, with all that future value on the Patriots, if they were available to me, I don't know how much I'd look at them in this spot. They got home to Cleveland just 1 week from now. So I love them in this spot, though. So I think if 32% are on the Patriots, I think they will survive.
Yeah, I think we can talk about the Patriots the same way we talked about the Chiefs. Good chance to win this week, but also really, really valuable team moving forward. By the way, 35% chance of rain. Doesn't that starting running back in New England have some fumbling problems every once in a while? So keep an eye on the weather in that game as well. You know, are the Titans going to get that interim coach bump that we sometimes see? Like we saw that. Remember Jeff Saturday with the Colts? I don't know how many years ago that was. Right. Sometimes we see a team, and I think Jason, isn't it? Yeah. Like I think you're more likely to see that when the outgoing head coach was disliked. And I get the vibe that Callahan was disliked.
Absolutely.
Just seeing it on the sidelines, seeing his interactions with players, hearing players talk about him, it felt like they just couldn't wait for him to be gone. So theoretically, there could be a bump. And let me just say this, when you're 4-19 ATS as a head coach, it doesn't get much worse than that. So you bring in an interim coach. I honestly, this isn't a figure of speech. I honestly can't imagine Mike McCoy, the new interim head coach, doing a worse job. So I feel like it can only get better for the Titans. That said, revenge game here for Mike Vrabel. I think he's going to want to make a point. I think he's going to cover the number. I like the Patriots in this game. The only reason not to use them, in my opinion, is if you want to save them for the future.
Great stuff all around. I saw something hilarious. I believe it was Big Cat from Barstool talking about bringing back Jeff Fisher.
Oh, gosh.
It was hilarious. I believe it's in jest. Jeff Fisher, one of the worst NFL coaches for my money. I know he's achieved some things. I know maybe a little longevity, but you're going to go back down that train. Enjoy. I bet he's learned a lot since his time in the league.
I'm sure.
You know, it's really hard for me to see the Patriots giving one back here. Just can't can't see it happening. They seem like they're just sort of destined right here. And the Titans really could be that team where I'm looking every week to just sort of maybe even blindly fade as I move forward, you know?
Pats fan, in the room. Says he's not taking the Pats this week.
Yeah, okay. And they're clearly available to you like they aren't for me. Yeah, I mean, I think there are going to be spots to use them. But Tony, you know, we talk all about future value, right? Well, Drake May, what if Drake May concussion gone for a few weeks, right? And everything changes, right? How do you like Josh Dobbs? How do you know? So there he is.
Very true. Oh, there's your tweet. Is that the one you were talking about?
Yeah, and there was a whole sort of, sometimes you got to go back. Yeah, that's it. There it is. I mean,
If you're wondering about McCoy, the guy who's going to be the new coach here for at least the rest of the season, it looks like he was the head coach. I forgot about this.
Oh, that's right.
He was the head coach for the Chargers from 2013 to 16. So I guess that's a plus. He does have some head coaching experience. He shouldn't be in too over his head. But he's the offensive coordinator for the Broncos for 1 year, offensive coordinator for the Cardinals for a year in 2018, then the QB coach in Jacksonville, and then this assistant role that he had before he was interim. So his, trajectory, his career arc is not going in the direction that you want it to. He sort of keeps getting demoted. But we'll see if it makes much of a difference. I think you got a better head coach for the Patriots. I think it's a great spot for them.
Yeah. Sure. All right. Well, that does it for the 1 o'clock games. Before we get to the 4 o'clock games, let's have a word from our great sponsor, Race Oracle. Attention racing fans. If you want an edge at the track, you need Race Oracle. This subscription service uses advanced AI modeling built on over 200,000 historical races, crunching hundreds of data points from weather and track conditions to jockey history and speed ratings. Race Oracle gives you proprietary win percentages, Kelly betting strategies, and live odds tracking, covering every race in North America plus the UK and Ireland, so you can bet around the clock with confidence. Don't guess. Predict smarter. Subscribe today and start betting with data, not luck. Sometimes like betting on the ponies a little bit, Tony, on Sundays when I need a sort of little break. My heart needs a break from the National Football League. And we did it perfectly with the Race Oracle leading right into the Giants and the Broncos. Right, we always got to have Race Oracle touching the Colts or the Broncos in some way if we can, and it worked out perfectly.
I love it. Giants
at the Broncos. Do you want to go first, Tony? You want to lead us here? Talk to me.
I'll start it off for us. So 43.6% have Denver available in this game. They are traveling back from London, and the Giants have some extra rest. What I find fascinating about this game, Jason, from a Circa Survivor perspective, I think this is going to be a game that the math people like. Let me break down what this means. So in Circa Survivor, there's 3 types of players. There's like the standard typical NFL fan, and they come to their picks based off of what they know about the NFL. Some people call that ball knowledge, okay? That's number 1. Number 2 is the very math-focused individuals who don't care at all about ball knowledge, and they care about EV, they care about the math, and that's it. And I don't want to sound derogatory or stereotype, but some of these people are very closed-minded about the number 1 type of people. They're very demeaning toward them. They call them names, right? In my opinion, very closed-minded. In my opinion, very arrogant. The third type of Circa Survivor player is a blend of 1 and 2. That's what I would consider myself. The math, obviously, getting EV is very important, but I also sprinkle in some ball knowledge as well. This is the kind of game for the Broncos that I worry about the number 2 kind of people. The very black and white thinkers who are very focused on the math. Because I'll say to them, hey, the Giants are hot right now. I don't care. It's built into the spread. It's like a very robotic response.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Hilarious.
Like, hey, the Broncos are going to be coming back from London. They might be tired. That's already built into the spread. I don't care. Right? And so I worry about those Broncos backers in this game, because I think this is a type of game you need to consider the ball knowledge a little bit. You need to consider the vibes in the locker room. The black and white thinkers don't care about emotion. They care about numbers. Broncos could be in trouble this week.
Great stuff there. Gosh, we could do 30 minutes on what you just said there. So the Broncos were the team I had mapped out for this week in multiple scenarios until I saw Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, and whoever the fuck else. I don't care. Malik Neighbors not there. It doesn't matter to me. Until I saw them beat the defending champions on Thursday night, hear everything that Al Michaels had to say about Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo. I don't even care about all the stuff with the blue 10. I love his Cam Scattaboo. That it just, you see Brian Daboll has juice. Feels like he could maybe stick around. So to me, I've already played the Giants plus the 7 points, 7.5. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, right? The Broncos, to me, really didn't show me much. And while you said the team that what was the team you named earlier that says you know the least about or you have the least feel for? The Vikings. Broncos aren't far from that for me right now. I believe in them more long-term than I do in the moment. And despite having them sort of penciled in here, it's going to be, I don't see how I could go against that New York Giants, who have a really good front and potential to cause some havoc there. And I don't, Bo Nix to me, there's in spots I don't like. So, but I also like Sean Payton bouncing back from a win that was sort of underwhelming. So, this is a fascinating game, Tony. I think you brought up a lot of really good stuff. But what I will say, I certainly lean more to being that number one guy, just ball knowledge. I definitely bring in some statistics, but I'm also the guy that'll tell you, I'll show you statistics all day on both sides that cancel each other out. But this game originally for me, mapping it out in the Broncos, I feel like maybe the mathematicians might get us, Tony, and that my bet on the Giants might dump here. You feel me? I feel like they might get us here because I'm going away from my math and I'm going away from my map. So, and I'm going away from a lot of what I look at because I'm letting that intangible stuff get in more here. However, I don't mind doing it with the 7+ points. But for me, if you're asking me as of this moment, Chiefs or Broncos, I'm not going to sleep well against Cam Scatterbo.
Yeah, and this is the reason the math folks, for me to clarify, are going to like this game so much is because of the high spread and because of the perceived or the projected low ownership this week, because as I started off saying, only 43.6% have Denver available. And a lot of people are saving Denver for week 10. If you don't have Seattle and you don't have Buffalo, you better be saving Denver for week 10, because by the way, those are the three biggest favorites on week 10. And there's a big drop off after those three. So you can sit here and say, you know what? Only 43.6% have Denver available. A chunk of them are saving, chunk of those 43% are saving them for week 10. Yep. Denver is going to be low owned, and it's a 7.5 point favorite. That's all I need to know. Click Denver, done. I think that's
no, I hear you. And for those that have Buffalo, I believe Buffalo at Miami week 10. So for those that have the Bills available, potentially there's another option in week 10 available to you. But really interesting to me, Tony, because if you had asked me 8 days ago, Denver was the play for me here. Kansas City was not a consideration.
Gotta love that.
So Tony, I guess forgive me if any consideration for you on the Broncos here now or 8 days ago.
Nope, no interest whatsoever. I think it's a scary game. Now, I could look silly and the Broncos come out and win by 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked by that, but there is a path here for the Giants against a tired Broncos team. One note I'll say about this Broncos defense, it's very good. They do a very good job of keeping running quarterbacks in check, and Jackson Dart has some mobility. The Broncos defense has played Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Cam Ward, and for the season has allowed less than 50 combined rushing yards to quarterbacks. So that's worth noting. That's something that the Giants do pretty well at, running quarterback. That's one of their strengths. They don't have a lot of good receivers. The Broncos squash what the Giants do really well. So from a matchup perspective, that's a checkbox in the column for the Broncos there. Moving on, Colts at Chargers, our other horsey here. 39% have the Colts available. Boy, that number just keeps going down, doesn't it, Jason? It was a little above 40 last week, down to 39%. 98% have the Chargers available. Slot receiver Josh Downs has a concussion for the Colts, so he may not play. I would say probably more likely than not he doesn't play. Looks like a bit of a pros versus Joes game from a sports betting perspective. It looks like there's a lot of sharp people on the side of the Chargers, and the public likes the Colts. Looking at the betting splits for Circa, 41% of bets were on the Chargers, and 91% of the money was on them at Circa earlier today. So I thought that was fascinating. I think you don't use the Colts here. You just don't use the Colts because it's a situation where next week they play the Titans, low ownership. Next week is a dream spot to have the Colts. I will say this, after this week and next week, I don't know that there's a ton of spots for the Colts moving forward, even though they're a really good team. Just think next week is the move for the Colts owners. I don't think anybody's going to put them on them. If you have conviction in the Chargers and you want to use them here, the Chargers have a couple spots, but I just think that's an unnecessary risk at this point.
Yeah, and obviously from a Survivor standpoint, Colts are unavailable to me. Colts leading the league points per game, 4th from the top in points allowed, doing a lot of things right. Yeah. Not the hugest sample size. Tony, in terms of the offensive line for the Chargers, I have no interest in the game from a survivor standpoint, but in terms of the offensive line for the Chargers, I mean, that would certainly give you some pause if even considering the Chargers in this spot, even if you liked them in the game as the Sharps do.
Yeah, we know Slater's out. Alt is banged up, and the Colts have a pretty good defensive line. Latu, that defensive end, is good. DeForest Buckner's really good. I mean, top 3 guy, in my opinion, on the interior of the defensive line. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. I'd say Colts defensive line against the Chargers offensive line for sure.
Moving on. We're good, right?
Yeah.
Packers at Cardinals. Neither team available to me, Tony. I almost saved Green Bay last week and went with Pittsburgh, and I might have saved Green Bay for this spot. I'm not sure I would have even used them. So your thoughts on this game? I got nothing.
You know, I talked about how the Denver spot is going to be a good spot for the math folks, and I don't want to touch it. I think this Green Bay spot is a good spot for the math folks, and I kind of do like it. Packers are 43.2% available. That number's so low because so many people survived with the Packers last week, of course. I think that people who have the Packers are looking at other weeks in the future for them. Game against Carolina, and I forget who the other one is against, but they've got a couple really nice spots later in the season. Oh, the Giants. Actually, that one doesn't look so good anymore. That Packers against Giants. If the Giants are actually good, we'll see. But anyways, I think this might be a good EV play here for the Packers this week because that ownership is kind of capped. There's a ceiling on it. These teams played last season. The Green Bay won 34-13. A lot of the same coaching staff here for both teams. I would argue both defenses have gotten better since last year. Both offenses are about the same. And I do think it's telling that Arizona only scored 13 points with pretty much the same offense last year, same offensive coordinator, and the Packers defense got better, added Micah Parsons, etc. So I don't feel very great about the Cardinals here, but they were feisty last week.
Yeah.
They put up more of a fight than I think a lot of people expected, especially after that embarrassing loss to the Titans.
With Jacoby Brissett. So regardless, so if it's Murray or Brissett, how does that impact your handicap?
Honestly, not much at all. Believe it or not, because it's a foot injury for Murray. So if Murray's in, I've got to believe he's going to be a little less mobile. He's not going to be 100%. So either way, you're downgrading me. I feel like a hurt Kyler Murray or a healthy Jacoby Brissett is maybe a half-point difference there. It's not that big of a difference. So that doesn't even affect me that much. But there are other injuries here, especially the skill position guys for the Cardinals. Check this out. So we knew Trey Benson and James Conner, the top 2 running backs, were gone for the Cardinals. We already knew that. DeMercado, not at practice today. Bam Knight, his backup, limited at practice today.
Wow.
Zay Jones, wide receiver, didn't practice. Marvin Harrison, concussion, limited. Michael Wilson, wide receiver, limited. So if all those guys are out, I'm going to really like the Packers later on in the week. We'll see. Any other thoughts on this game before we move on?
No, let's move along.
Cool. Commanders, Cowboys. Instead of calling this a rematch, I'm going to call this a pre-match for the Christmas game later this season. So even if you don't have anybody on the Commanders or Cowboys, which you probably don't, you might want to watch this game, go back and look at the tape and see how these two teams looked against each other because they're going to face each other in Washington for Christmas. 94% have Washington available. CeeDee Lamb expected back at practice today. McLaurin expected back. If you didn't know, the Commanders have only had Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin for 2 games this season. Weeks 1 and 2. It looks like they may both be healthy for this one. I have no interest whatsoever. I've got both of these teams available on most of my tickets. I have no interest whatsoever in either of them for Circa Survivor. How about you?
Agree. Coin flip game. I probably lean Dallas as of tonight in terms of picking the game. No Survivor considerations. For me, I actually kind of like a lot of what both of these teams, I like a lot of what Dallas is doing, and I like a lot of what Washington can be. So I think some of the future value, while it might not be specific for me now, might be apparent as the weeks go on. So nothing for me there.
You know what I find interesting about this game, though, Jason? You and I want nothing to do with this game, right?
Yep.
It's one of the best options on Christmas. Doesn't that speak to how insane the Christmas holiday is going to be? That the perceived best option or one of the best options on Christmas, we want nothing to do with this week.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And Mike, if you don't mind, throw up the holiday picks. It's like, well, and Tony, it's like, if you're telling me I get to Christmas, even better, Mike Jones, always on top of it. Shout out our guy at Media Zone. So Mike, or excuse me, Tony, I will say for me, I don't even care who I have. You're telling me I got Dallas, but I'm alive on Christmas. Okay, let's go.
Sure.
Let's go. Right. So to me, there's so many variables. The only team I really wouldn't want is Denver, because I don't know. I think the Chiefs really maybe have found something in a year where the AFC is sort of barren in a way, or maybe just more packed up, but just fascinating to me. You got to get there, baby.
And I tell you, I told you, I don't have my mind made up on this Vikings team. They could be a good team. They could be a bad team. I have no friggin' clue. But if they end up being a bad team, maybe Detroit is the team that kind of ends up being the one you want by the time Christmas rolls around. That's possible. There's a lot of possibilities here.
Well,
man.
Tony, and the home road thing, I feel like you and I should do a whole show just on home versus road, because you the point you made, which is a terrific point, it's changed over the years in terms of the handicap. Oh, -3 for being home. No, not the same thing. And you could look, certain players, I think, perform better at home. Certain players perform better on the road. So it'd be interesting. We could go down a long rabbit hole there.
Absolutely. On a short week as well. It's not just a road game. It's a road game with less time to prepare. Yeah, there's a whole different angles we could go there for sure. All right, next up, Sunday Night Football. Atlanta Falcons at San Francisco 49ers. Lots of ownership for both these teams. Atlanta, 99.8%. San Francisco, 98.6%. Several good spots for the 49ers later this season, including against the Titans, including against the Panthers. I couldn't dream anybody out there would want to put one on the 49ers here in this spot. They just lost Fred Warner. Let me read you the 49ers trio of linebackers now that Fred Warner's hurt. D. Winters, who's actually played pretty well this year, but D. Winters, Luke Gifford, and Tatum Bethune, a 7th-round pick from last season. Going up against Bijan, who we just saw what he did against the Bills when you got a linebacking core that looks like that. I don't have faith in the 49ers. Certainly wouldn't trust Atlanta here either in this spot. You know, again, our math people don't like to talk about emotions, but I do want to say 49ers looked deflated when they lost Fred Warner. You had Juwan Jennings saying he was nauseous after seeing the injury, not just because of what he saw, but knowing that he lost Warner, who was such a leader. Several other guys said similar things. 49ers locker room, I don't think, is in a great place.
Great stuff there. You know, shout out everybody who was part of Zero Dark 30. Those of us that went down with the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers 30-0 week 3, I believe. You know, and then you see them beat the Bills and you say, okay, right. I think Panic's talking about them being a contender. So before, I think it was Sunday morning or Sunday at some point before the Falcons game, before Fred Warner went down, my brother was talking to me about using the 49ers this week. And I was telling him, no fucking way, even before Warner got injured, just for a variety of reasons. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus here, but the reason he's talking about the 49ers is because he's trying to zig when others are zagging. You can be sure he's going to try and convince me not to go on the Chiefs this week. And given that there are a lot of opportunities. So the 49ers, right? He probably still likes the 49ers, right? Obviously watching Bijan. I think, you know, that game to me flipped, frankly, after seeing what I saw Monday night in my mind. But to me, my brother is really looking to go against the grain, and I respect that, because if we're going to win this thing, maybe it's because we don't use the Chiefs this week.
Yeah, I like it. I like that line of thinking a lot. I have a question for you about Zero Dark 30. Before I ask you that question, I want to ask everybody out there to hit that thumbs up button. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. We're having some issues with Spotify and some of our podcasts, Apple, Amazon, etc. right now. We'll get it worked out. But if you can go ahead and subscribe on those as well, drop us a like. It helps a lot with the algorithm. And if you're not already following us on Twitter at LastMenPod, we appreciate that.
Great stuff. And Tony Farmer, you need any help with that Spotify stuff, just hit up our guy, Mike Jones. Mike Jones, take care of all that stuff. Right, Mike Jones? You know, Mike Jones take care of all that stuff.
I've been dealing with customer service folks at Spotify for the last week. It's been rough. But yeah, Mike can take that off my plate. I'd be more than happy to. My question for you about Zero Dark 30 is, that game was in Carolina. For people who don't know, we're talking about the Panthers beating the Falcons 30-0 earlier this season. They have a rematch in a few weeks. A little bit of a revenge spot for the Falcons because they got embarrassed. Can you hit that button with one entry left on the Falcons at home against Carolina, knowing that they lost 30-0 earlier this season?
What a great question, Tony. And until this very moment, because of how scarred I was by Zero Dark 30, I didn't even think about the Falcons. You talk about the 12 teams you're not going to lose, you're not going to use. Yeah. Atlanta might as well be team 33 for me, because I'm so scarred by Zero Dark 30, Tony. I just realized now they're available to me. Oh, great stuff there. But I feel as though this Carolina team, maybe is not a bottom dweller with the Saints, Jets, Browns, Titans, right? I don't know. I think maybe, I still, there's certain teams you maybe don't put as many of your eyeballs on. Carolina maybe is a team I haven't seen as much this year, but they've had some moments.
Absolutely. And by the way, this is a little off topic, but I want to get back to a question that we started the show with. Elijah asked me, do you trust the Browns or Bears more at home this week? And it's probably the Bears, but not by much. Like point spread wise, I think the difference there is like 4 points or so. And I probably like the Bears by like a point or two.
But and I'll say, Elijah, I think it's a great question because do you trust? It's implying that we trust them both at home, which we do, right? So if we're saying we trust the Browns, right? I feel like there's a lot of conviction there from Tony and I on the Browns. It'll be interesting to see what Dolphins team shows up, but we trust that. I like the word trust there. It says a lot that we trust them as 1.5 favorites.
Yeah. And I think what's going to be fascinating is Saturday. How many people are on the Jets? How many people are on the Browns? How many people are on the Panthers? I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see. And then the Chiefs number, which I keep talking about, like if that's at 10% or 30%, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't know what to expect there. It's going to be, oh, look at that. That is awesome.
That's from the movie. I love it. Unbelievable.
I hope every time that 30 game comes up, we can pull that graphic up. I absolutely love it.
And Tony, one thing I'll say that I love, you're going to get in the money. And I love having just one entry. Let me just say that. It is it really is a nice experience until I go out this week, on the Chiefs. But anyway, I know we got to get to Monday night.
By the way, you promised me you'd tell me what your brother was thinking for this week. Have we gotten to that game yet?
So it was the 49ers, but the Fred Warner,
sorry, when you said that, I thought you were talking about last week.
No, I mean, that's what it was. And he brought it to me early, Tony. It was before Fred Warner went down. I was laughing, but it was the 49ers. And it's not like that conversation. I mean, it pretty much totally went away with Fred Warner. I'm surprised the 49ers still favored on paper, if I'm being honest, given what the Falcons did. I know it could be a little recency bias there, but that was the one. And I frankly was afraid of it, but he was serious, Tony. And I think he brought it to me Sunday morning. So not that we were cashing the Packers ticket yet. Jesus.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I've got a teaser leg on the Falcons up to 8.5 there. So I like them with a little bit of a buffer. But
I agree.
Moving on, we got 2 Monday Night Football games again. Is this the last week we have a doubleheader on Monday night? I think it might be, but I'm not positive on that. 51.2% of the people have the Lions available here. Again, the Lions are a holiday team ×2. I can't imagine you're going to use Detroit in this spot. One, because Baker Mayfield is just playing out of his mind right now. He's probably the MVP candidate if you have to vote for it today. On that award, doesn't feel good going against him. The Lions have a really good record after losses under Dan Campbell. I do like the Lions to win this game, but the Bucs scare me a little bit. I don't like going against good teams like Tampa Bay, even though they're banged up. But more importantly, if there's 51.2% of people on the Lions today, I want to use the Lions later, maybe on Christmas if I still have them, which I don't, when that number is real low, like under 10%. And you can't use the Lions here in this spot and still have that scenario later. So I want nothing to do with this from a Circa Survivor perspective. You?
Couldn't agree more. I like the Lions in the game, but don't love them. I do have the Lions available to me. And like Baker Mayfield, when Tom Brady, I'm a Patriots fan, when Brady was on the Buccaneers, I reluctantly had to root for Tampa Bay a little bit. Baker Mayfield's making me want to root for Tampa Bay. It's making me want to have an NFC team. He's so fun to watch. Couldn't even consider going against him in this contest, I don't think, at any point.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Our last Monday Night Football game, 31% chance of rain. Keep an eye on the weather for this one. It is Texans at Seattle. I had to pause for a second because my note said Texas. I missed an N. Texans at Seattle on Monday Night Football. 71.7% of people have the Texans left. By the way, there's a pretty sweet spot for the Texans still on their schedule against Tennessee in a few weeks. I think that'll be pretty important. 46.3% have Seattle left. And I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, that week 10, you either want Denver, Buffalo, or Seattle available. For the people out there that have used all three of those teams already, good luck in week 10. You might be better off just selling your entry at this point and hoping someone doesn't notice that you've burned those three teams. Honestly, man, I like this. I like Seattle a lot as a team. I got like futures bets on them, etc. I think the Texans are underrated. They're way better than their record indicates right now. But from a Circa Survivor standpoint, I can't use Seattle because I don't have them, but I wouldn't even if I did have them because of that future value that we mentioned. And because, honestly, nothing would surprise me in this game. Seattle wins by a little, Texans win by a little, Seattle wins by a lot, Texans win by a lot. I don't have a good feel for the game, and I want nothing to do with it from Circus.
Yeah, Seattle not available to me. Couldn't agree with you more. Houston coming off a bye. I think they're better. Won a couple straight. I think could be a spot. We talk about Seattle under Mike McDonald, better on the road than at home. So maybe I'd gobble up the 3.5 points if forced to choose, but nothing from a Survivor standpoint.
All right, I got another question for you. I asked you if you would trust Atlanta in their rematch against Carolina.
Yes.
Let's get ahead of ourselves a little bit. And my next question for you is, how about the Eagles in Philadelphia against the Giants in a couple weeks or a week and a half, right?
The Giants to me are not in that bottom conversation anymore. It'll be interesting to see what they do against Denver. Maybe the mathematicians maybe the group twos will be right, Tony, as we joke.
Yeah.
But that to me, it's a really delicate, we in this contest, we look so far into the future and there's just so much unknown, there's just so much we don't know about these teams. There's so many of the teams that fall into that category of teams we just don't know a lot about yet. So it'd be interesting to see, because Tony, when, we talk about multiple entries and there's been a lot of carnage, but you have a few of your own. I'm sure you got some other considerations. I would love to have 3 entries right now. I'm sure you're feeling pretty good about your position, despite having felt like it's been sort of some bad beats.
Yeah, I feel like I've had some bad beats for sure in Circa Survivor this year, but I've also had a couple lucky ones as well, where I probably should have been on the other end of it. So I can't complain. This is another year for me making a deep run in Circa Survivor. 75% of the pool is knocked out. You just want to be alive. You and I are both in this thing. That's all you can ask for at this point. It does give me a little bit of comfort to have multiple entries, but I tell the story all the time where I had 2 entries left out of the final 80, and I lost them in the same weekend. So having multiple entries, we talked about Gil Alexander, going out on the Rams and the Cardinals and the Bills all in 1 week. So multiple entries and diversifying your path doesn't always save you, even though it obviously does give you some comfort for sure.
Final thought from me, just to keep in mind as we look forward this week, Baltimore and Buffalo on buys, but week 8, 6 buys, Arizona, Detroit, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, the Rams, and Seattle. So not as many games to choose from in week 8. So inevitably a little bit of carnage from that fact alone.
My final thought here, this is a little tip for folks that are using their Survivor grid, hopefully over at Survivor Atlas or wherever you get yours. Consider the trade deadline coming up. A team like the Saints, you may look now and see that they're a 4-point underdog, but you can almost project and be like, wait, well, what if the Saints sell a couple of their starters? A team like the Giants, who we keep talking about on this show, supposedly are in the market for a wide receiver. How does that team look if they suddenly have a decent number 1 receiver on their roster? So just don't be too stubborn and closed-minded as you're looking at this grid ahead. Oh, no, I don't want anything to do with that team. That team might look different because of a trade. The Jets, man, you think the Jets might unload some team? Maybe you don't trust the Jets right now against another middling team, but that point spread might be 3 or 4 points higher because they've traded away 3 starters at the trade deadline. So just keep that in mind as you plan your grid, folks.
Great stuff, Tony. Great to be with you. Quick hour, 17 minutes. Please follow us at Last Men Pod. Tony Farmer, Mike is yours, baby.
Appreciate you guys very much. As Jason said, follow, hit that like button, especially if you got something out of the show. Make sure you're following on YouTube. Please do. Take care. Best of luck, everybody, especially if you're on Steelers on Thursday.
Only the strongest left now. Who's ready to win?